So, you know what's quite interesting about Ben Shapiro speaking about Candace Owens is that I think the agreement was not to speak about Candace Owens. So, if the rule is not to talk about Fight Club, why are you still talking about Fight Club? Or why are you alluding to it? Like, this goes against all the rules of PR. So that's why I'm genuinely curious about what he has to say in this conversation with Rubin. And this is a short clip. Luckily, it's 9 minutes, and I'm going to put it on 1.25 speed because I will interject with my thoughts. So this is a reaction. That's what happens here. I'm Serena. I talk about media and political literacy, and we tend to cover various areas. Various areas. Okay, let's on that note, play.
She's free to do whatever she wants to do, to be wherever she wants to be. And the difference between a publisher like the Daily Wire and a platform like Locals is obviously that a platform should have a very broad range of speech that it allows, including speech that maybe even the creators don't believe is inside what they would consider to be the Overton window. It's a very different thing.
I just realized because he speaks so fast, I might need to do this on a normal speed. So I'm going to rewind that. Okay, this is the part where he sort of like wishes her well in her future endeavors and thanks her for her service, kind of thing. Sorry, just a bit of humor, not journalism.
She's free to do whatever she wants to do, to be wherever she wants to be. And the difference between a publisher like the Daily Wire and a platform like Locals is obviously that a platform should have a very broad range of speech that it allows, including speech that maybe even the creators don't believe is inside what they would consider to be the Overton window. It's a very different thing than direct subsidization of particular opinions.
Yo. I tweeted this yesterday. I've just remembered why I wanted to do this. I just remembered why I wanted to do this so badly. So let me quickly just sort of break this down. He mentions this Overton window so frequently. And I just want to just sort of like give a little definition, like. So the Overton window is a range of policies politically acceptable to the mainstream population at a given time. It is also known as a window of discourse. So what happens if you use it in the way that he's using it? Again, the Overton window is a model for understanding how ideas in society change over time and influence politics. Oh my gosh, it's just the core concept is that politicians are limited to what they can say. Okay, this is it. So he's using this. Okay, they're limited in what policy ideas they can support. They generally only pursue policies that are widely accepted throughout society as legitimate policy options. These policies lie inside the Overton window. Other policy ideas exist, but politicians risk losing popular support if they champion these ideas. These policies lie outside the Overton window. So let me just plop that in the chat. Yeah, let me just plop that in the chat. So this is how he's using it. This is how he's using it. He's using it incorrectly. Hey, Faison, welcome. I hope you have a good one. This is him speaking slow, Mars. Yup. So he's using this incorrectly. He could just say that we at the Daily Wire have a policy on what we will and won't speak about. That policy is an internal agreement, and she's gone against it. But sort of using this sort of like Overton window is almost like saying, broadly speaking, like we represent a policy that is. It just feels so misused, and it's like it's like when you learn, sorry for any Ben Shapiro fans, but if you learn a word of the day on your toilet paper and then you just rinse it, but you're not using it quite correctly. And I'm not the only commentator who said that it's not been used correctly. So let's go back to it. This time normal speed because he speaks fast.
All right, Shapiro, here we go. In person once again. I was told that the last time we actually sat in person together was July of 2020. Here we are in the free state of Florida.
And
you did it.
Not everything I say is prophetic, but that one, that felt like an easy call at the time and turned out to be like actually a really easy call. The good news is you did get the upside on the house that you bought in LA, so you didn't get totally hosed on that.
That's true.
Which is my fear for you when you bought that second house. I will say you could have saved yourself a few years and a lot of money in income tax.
A lot of money, a fruitless effort to depose Gavin Newsom in a recall election. I got audited by the state after that.
Your optimism had costs.
I tried. You know what I mean? And trying is always worth it, right? In this world that we're in right now.
I wish that were true.
No?
I wish that
Have you shifted now to the other side of this?
You know, every time I think I've hit the bottom of the pessimistic well, it turns out that there are leagues below me. And I can always find new ways to be pessimistic.
All right, so let's do a bunch of stuff here. We've done this over Skype and that kind of stuff a couple of times, even just in the last few months. But it's been a while since we've sat down. I actually have notes here, which I hate having, but I want to kind of cover everything. In some ways, I want to do this as if I had never seen you before, or know some of your stuff, or interviewed you before, because I think there's a lot of confusion about you and your positions. Which is, do you?
Exactly. So it's a controlled agenda. So when he's using this phrase, this way of describing what's gone on there with Candace Owens as the Overton window, it's just a mask for what is really the case, and it's this.
Find that odd, like someone who speaks as precisely and fast as you do, that people seem to be confused over your positions?
Yes. And I find it
What happened to Dave Rubin?
Deeply confusing because, again, I'm public record on everything for at least 20 years. I started writing a syndicated column when I was 17. I'm currently 40. So the notion that you have to go far to search for my opinions is strange to me. But the online world is not a real world. And the phrase I've been finding myself using a lot lately is touch some grass.
Mm-hmm.
And people need to go outside and they need to touch some grass. Like turn off X, go touch some grass.
Smoke some grass, touch some grass. Like he's mentioned, again, another thing that he just rinses. He rinses this.
Turn off Instagram, go outside, look at the sky. Like the reality is that if you want to know my positions, I've been outspoken about literally all of them. I've not been unclear about them.
That's fair, but it's just, okay.
There are, of course, people who are going to...
By the way, I got some feedback that I keep interrupting and I react too quickly and I should wait for them to finish. Serena. So here we go. Let's rewind.
Go touch some grass. Turn off Instagram, go outside, look at the sky. Like the reality is that if you want to know my positions, I've been outspoken about literally all of them. I've not been unclear about them. There are, of course, people who are going to seek to twist those positions into something that they are not. And I understand that's the nature of the game. Nothing has changed there. But the prevalence and speed with which that happens, that has changed. And that's gotten significantly worse over the course of the last few years.
How do you balance that for yourself? Because I talk about it on the show all the time. I mean, we're in this digital world. We're basically existing in the matrix, which I would say if you spend more than 12 hours and 1 second on there, you pretty much are just the battery for the thing. Versus we all go out and about, and at least here in Florida, we have a functional society and we have law and order and things like that. So just contrasting the lunacy that's happening there versus actually, not that everything's great in America, it certainly isn't, we're going to get to it, but there's a huge chasm between those two things.
For sure. And I think that for me, the big move that I made in my life was probably 5-6 years ago now, where my wife turned to me and she said, Twitter, even then, was taking up too much of your time and eating your life. You really need to not have Twitter on your phone. And so I took Twitter off my phone.
You need to get a life.
So what I'll do is I'll check in on specific accounts from the outside of Twitter where I actually have to spend the effort to log into to Twitter and look up what a specific news account is saying.
Mate, there's noise everywhere. There's noise everywhere. It's not just Twitter.
As opposed to just having this scrolling doom feed that is also filled with an echo chamber about you. The notifications button on Twitter is bad. It's gotten way worse since the... Listen, I love that Elon took over X.
You check the Ben Shapiro notifications?
No. I gave that up a long time ago. I will say that
I gave it up a long time ago, but yeah, I did routinely. Mate, turn off all notifications for everything. Have your phone on Do Not Disturb. That's what I do.
It did get significantly worse when I would check on it since the changes to the blue check.
Yeah.
I mean, the changes to the blue check mark definitely opened up all the floodgates in terms of anyone now being in your notifications. So it made it a lot less usable just in terms of being user-friendly and people you actually cared about commenting on what you were doing. But with all that said, yeah, I really don't check Twitter a lot except for the news when I'm attempting to prep for the show. And I really try never to check the notifications or the comments or anything remotely like that because it is toxicity all the way up, all the way down.
All right, so let's do the elephant in the room for just a moment, because I saw you this week on Piers Morgan. He asked you repeatedly about Candace. You repeatedly basically said
I won't talk about
don't
that.
want
Yeah,
to talk
and I'll say
about
that
it.
here too.
Yeah, and that's fine.
I say that here too, but I will.
And it's interesting because we all sort of came up together to different extents, and we've all done a million things together in public events and networks and all of those things. It seems to me that at this moment, she's now a free agent. She happened to end up on Locals, which I created, and we're a platform, not a publisher that you guys are. Can you at least talk to just sort of where it's at now? She's not with you. She's free.
She's free to do whatever.
Okay, so that's quite that's the way out. It's like, can you at least say where things are at now? But it's still to do with Candace. And you're not supposed to be talking about it. Mars says he just said keep the plebs from blowing up my notifications. The condescension, Mars. It's just
She wants to do, to be wherever she wants to be. And the difference between a publisher like the Daily Wire and a platform like Locals is obviously that a platform should have a very broad range of speech that it allows, including speech that maybe even the creators don't believe is inside what they would consider to be the Overton window. It's a very different thing than direct.
the Overton window. I talked about it right at the start. Again, I put it in the chat. I put it in the chat. The Overton window. He uses this just like he uses touch grass. Touch grass, Overton window. Right, honey, I'm out the door. I know my two phrases for the day. I don't know what accent that was.
Subsidization of particular opinions. So the Daily Wire would not have a host, would not pay a host who was staunchly pro-abortion.
Mm-hmm.
They would have no obligation to pay a host who is staunchly pro-abortion. And so when it comes to the hosts on the Daily Wire, obviously everyone is able to say what they want. Nobody ever comes to me and says, you can't say X. Nobody ever says that to Walsh. And no one ever said that to Candace. But the reality is that there is an Overton window at the Daily Wire. Obviously, there was a non-meeting of the minds. That's pretty much all I can say on this. And, a lot of this has happened publicly. But to the extent that the Daily Wire is in fact not a publisher, it is that is in fact not a platform, it is a publisher. That means that there is no moral obligation for the Daily, and there's no free speech problem with the Daily Wire saying we don't wish to pay a particular host, or that host saying I don't wish to work here anymore, because again, there's a parting of the ways that
It's really weird framing to say, instead of somebody getting fired, let's be more passive. Again, it's that passive voice. The organization's just not going to pay the person anymore, and the person just is not going to want to work there anymore. Just really sort of round the houses way of talking about it, instead of saying directly, we let her go because we didn't agree with her stance on things. It's just the most ludicrous word salad, jargon, phrasing, touch the grass, Overton window, can't pay the salary, the publisher, not a platform, blah, 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 blah. Just call it what it is. But people think people are really stupid. And that's why they'll continue to talk about talk about things in this super round the houses way constantly.
is not really open for discussion at this point.
Does it surprise you that so many people, even on our side of this, are confused about that as it relates to free speech and quote unquote cancel culture? Like severing a business tie, as long as you're not throwing someone in jail, they're able to be everywhere else, is not.
That's right, Faizan. He's trying to give 101 excuses to fire her, yet without giving a single valid excuse. That's really what it is. And what it is, it's like, it's so clear why, okay? And of course, it's your prerogative, but just don't dress it up as something else or be super vague about it. Sort of all this sort of critique about, all the disinformation, misinformation. What about all the word spin and the spinning and the word salad and the salading? It's just a lot.
I'm not super.
But that all of that is really irresponsible commentary and journalism as well. It's like you will continue to just spin things without giving your, let's just say, audience any kind of, like, you're not expecting them to be smart or intelligent in any way to be able to sort of decipher, determine for themselves. So instead, you're just going to continue to give them word salad and just talk around the houses and not be clear with them. But apparently they had a town hall. Was that town hall just for Daily Wire peeps? Did it include any of their audience? And I don't know. Let's go back to it.
Surprised at the controversy, honestly, because to a certain extent, I think that there's been a
You're surprised about the controversy. Okay, listen, someone's going to say, you react too quickly, Serena. Yes, I do. Because when something is said, I have to react. Why are you surprised at the controversy? You made a massive deal when Candace Owens joined you, a massive one. She was a prominent, like she was up there, according to reports. She was up there with Ben Shapiro in terms of the pull that she had for the Daily Wire. So of course there's going to be controversy. Come on now.
Just about that as it relates to free speech and quote unquote cancel culture, like severing a business tie, as long as you're not throwing someone in jail, they're able to be everywhere else, is not
I'm not super
culture
surprised at the controversy, honestly, because to a certain extent, I think that there's been a reaction on the right to the excesses of the left. So because what the left did is they said that the Overton window ought to be closed so tight that no one can get inside the Overton window. Basically, if you're to the right of Hillary Clinton, you can't be allowed inside
Welcome
the Overton
to my
window.
world,
yes,
brother.
exactly. And not just with regard to platforms, but with regard to publishers. So, for example, this week, NBC News deciding that Ronna McDaniel was too much for them. Ronna McDaniel can't work at NBC News. The sacred halls of NBC News must not be sullied by the former head of the RNC. Jen Psaki, however, can have a show on MSNBC despite being the press secretary for the White House 5 seconds ago. Right? The right's response to that is, I think, correct to say you guys have shut the Overton window too tight. But I think some elements of the right have basically said there is no Overton window. The Overton window should be completely exploded with regard not just to platforms, with which I kind of agree, but with regard to publishers. So NBC News not only has an obligation to hire Ronna McDaniel, NBC News has the obligation to hire Alex Jones, for example.
Right,
which
I don't think just makes
true.
no sense at a business level beyond free speech. I mean, there's a reason that networks exist. It
Right, they have editorial
yeah.
positions.
Yeah.
Daily Wire has a very strong editorial position on a wide variety.
Okay, so you could have just said editorial position, stop banging on about Overton window. Mars, it doesn't make sense because if someone even criticizes other people who work for the Daily Wire, it's trying to attack free speech, but firing one is just business. LOL, this is Faizan, and this conversation between them literally just killed about 7 of my brain cells. Bren's examples. Exactly. And then Mars comes back with, when someone gets fired, they agree with it. Again, attacking free speech. Well said, Mars, from Faizan. Here. Back to it. Let's lose some brain cells and then we'll get them back at the end, okay?
Of issues. And by the way, I should say that, there are a lot of people who are suggesting this is about disagreements over Israel. I mean, I can safely say it is not about disagreements over Israel, to the extent that, without reference to Candace at all here, Matt Walsh has taken the position that America ought not be involved in the Middle East at all. Matt Walsh's position, so far as I understand it, and I've talked to him about it, is that Israel, in a conflict between Israel and Hamas, Israel is obviously a more moral party than the genocidal terrorist group Hamas, but also it's very far away. He doesn't care and it doesn't involve America. That's just a pure isolationist position. I disagree with it. I think it's wrong. I think that it's short-sighted. But again,
he just revealed himself. He completely revealed himself there. He said, I don't have a problem with who's the dude he's talking about who's being isolationist, and which is why he doesn't want to talk about the conflict. Let me just rewind 1 sec.
A very strong editorial position on a wide variety of issues. And by the way, I should say that, there are a lot of people who are suggesting this is about disagreements over Israel. I mean, I can safely say it is not about disagreements over Israel, to the extent that, without reference to Candace at all here, Matt Walsh has taken the position that America ought not be involved in the Middle East at all. Matt Walsh's position, so far as I understand it, and I've talked to him about it, is that Israel, in a conflict between Israel and Hamas, Israel is obviously a more moral party than the genocidal terrorist group Hamas, but also it's very far away. He doesn't care and it doesn't involve America. That's just a pure isolation.
So Matt Walsh is allowed to have that opinion because he's being an isolationist, but as long as he also accepts that Israel is the more moral party in this, then we're good. Whereas what happened with Candace is that she questioned the morality of the killing of innocent children. That's what's happened. You question the morality of the killing of innocent children and civilians. Therefore, you are questioning the actions of who. And that's the problem. So that's what's so flipping obvious to everyone, but you just don't want to say it. And you want to claim to be these like architects of like responsible journalism and free speech. Yet when you have to answer questions, you just deliberately evade and make everything long. It's so long. Like, allow me, please.
His position. I disagree with it. I think it's wrong. I think that it's short-sighted. But again, he's on our platform. That is well within.
He's on your platform because he didn't question the morality of the actions. That's why.
In the range of acceptable discourse at the Daily Wire. So, the notion that you have to mirror my exact perspectives on what Israel is doing in Gaza is obviously not true.
No, you're obviously not true. This is really irresponsible.
Based on the roster of hosts that we currently have, there are a lot of other factors, obviously, at play.
If you're looking for more honest and
you
thoughtful
froze. You're talking like a
conversations about
zombie,
politics,
mate. That's why you froze. You're talking like a zombie. Allow me, please. So you can see there from that is insulting your intelligence, constantly talking about free speech and responsible journalism and all the rest of it and all the disinformation, misinformation. Listen, you cannot spend your time creating content, creating commentary for your audience, your dedicated audience, and continue to evade, be ambiguous on purpose, mislead people, make misrepresentations, give stupid word salad, overly speak about some Overton window when you could have just said it was an editorial policy decision because Candace Owens questioned the morality of the action since innocent civilians were being killed. That's what happened. Um, but there was another way around this. If you want to spin it, but spin it a little bit more, I don't know. How can you spin this? How can you? Because it's so obvious. You saw what happened. There was a flurry of content coming from Candace Owens. A flurry, okay. There was a lot of content coming from her, and she was questioning the morality of killing so many innocent civilians. And then we also saw her then falling out with Ben Shapiro online. So you could already see that there was going to be a bit of a fallout. So it's already obvious. So actually, as the Daily Wire, what you could say instead is Candace Owens has had a fundamental disagreement with us on principles relating to our policy decisions. But you see, if you say that, then you enter into this sort of free speech area where you will essentially end up contradicting yourself and everything that you say, especially your talking points. So that's why we're hearing all this word salad, Overton window, yada, 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 touch the grass, touch the grass. Faizan said, it really just saddens me that Ben has an audience. What an absolute tool. I'm just glad we have people like Mars, Serena, and myself who can see the lies within minutes and call out the BS. Thanks, Faizan and Mars and others watching. I have to say that, I will still watch this content because isn't it really important that we are aware of all corners of society as much as we can possibly can without cluttering our heads and cluttering our minds? We still need to focus on what we're here to do, not just to absorb all of this information, all of this data, not just to be here in the micro. We've got to zoom out. We've got to get macro. We've got to think about why we're here in the first place. It's so easy to get lost in the data, get lost in the source. But it is important to know what you're working with, what's going on, what's the pulse, what's the sort of like social sort of socio-political landscape saying, what's moving, what's changing, whether it's for your own interests or the interests of your loved ones, your family, your students, whoever it is, your community, whoever it is that you care for and are in charge of, let's say. So we have to have awareness. At the same time, we also need to be focused on our action and our contribution. And that's where all of these things sort of work in parallel. That's why, I'm super highly critical of the sort of personal development / spiritual sort of industry. For being all about making people super individualistic and navel gazing and just thinking about themselves and how they can optimize, be productive without any kind of sense of what's going on in the world. And these things have to work in parallel. All of these things have to work in parallel. We can't just get so tunnel visioned about just the one thing. And that's when you have to apply your critical thinking. You have to apply your own rational thinking and zoom out and not just get so sucked into anyone's propaganda, anyone's word salad, anyone's shit show. But that's not what they're going to teach you at school. That's not what they're teaching my kid at school. That's not what they encourage in any of the spaces that we visit, that we frequent, because they want you to get stuck in the data. Why is that? So that you can be a, let's say, frequent user, a frequent visitor for that one thing, so that then that person can sell you a course, that then you become a voter, so then you become somebody who's going to buy them, what do you call it, as soon as I monetize I'll know what it is, supers and that kind of thing. This is the thing, they want cult followers, and they're all behaving like cult leaders, every single one of them. This is how tribalism is working now. They're all behaving like cult leaders, and what they're going to do is constantly give you new talking points, new positions, make you stupid, and then you end up repeating the same stupidity that they are spouting, and you will end up spouting that around the dinner table. Can you imagine the amount of people you will end up alienating, and then suddenly they'll just label as you as being right or left or whatever, instead of us saying, okay, what's the actual critical analysis of the situation? How can I demonstrate critical analysis and then ensure that somebody else around the dinner table is not going to fall into the same trap that others are, that I won't fall into? It's such an incredibly sad situation. You're absolutely right, Faizan, that people have such, and I'm paraphrasing, and I'm sort of borrowing from your sentiment, that people have such hardcore audiences when they are so irresponsible with their journalism, their commentary, with their content. Now, you are allowed to be partial, you can have your opinion, but can we just be honest? Can we be like genuine and sort of straight talking about it? Can we? Can you just sort of like say it with your entire chest? You have let go of Candace Owens due to fundamental disagreements on where she sits on the current Israel and Hamas conflict. That's what you could be saying. But no, that's not what's going to be said. People are doing the math, they understand. So it's only going to hurt your brand. From a PR perspective, you're hurting your brand. You need to be very clear. And then what happens, instead of being clear, they'll just do this constant like evasion, which will just confuse and puzzle people. And then time will go by, and then something else will happen. And then other prominent people within that camp will just stay silent unless they're asked about something. And then they'll just deflect and they'll distract you and take you down some other rabbit hole. It's so rife. It's happening all the time. And they'll do these things. These are the mechanisms that they'll use. You know, look. Now listen. So it's this kind of patronizing tone. They'll suddenly take you down this other road. Look, let me tell you what you really need to be thinking about. Let me reframe your question. Let me take you down. And the so-called plebs are just eating it up. Eating it up. Faizan says, if wishes were horses, beggars would be flying. Never expect anything honest from certain media whose agenda isn't honest. Mars says, it still hurts Candace the most, I think, in the long run. She's pushed herself into a more niche political stance. Well, something's happening, and I'm predicting it, and I'm seeing it more and more. I'm seeing it within mainstream media. I'm seeing it within sort of content creator space. There's suddenly a real focus on Christianity, and that's absolutely fine. But there's suddenly this almost, I would say, much more Christian moral argument and stance being taken, not just by prominent people, but by headlines. And we know who controls headlines, right? And so there's almost like this warring that they're trying to initiate now. So it's like, okay, we see this thing going on between these so-called ideologies, and we know it's not about ideologies. We know this is about geopolitics. We know why conflicts are taking place. But you see now, for the plebs, let's distract the plebs with something new. Let's distract them with morality arguments. Right? So now let's bring in Christianity to be using, oh gosh, when things are just engineered and done in such a disingenuous manner, and now you can see it. So the reason why I thought this is because Miles said it's going to hurt Candace. So Candace is now having to double down on her Christian morality, if you like. She's going to double down on it. Then you got the likes of Russell Brand is talking about Christ as well, and that's absolutely true. That's absolutely fine. I've literally just seen 20 minutes max while I was making my eggs of Muhammad Hijab on the Fresh and Fit pod talking about Christ. It's a question that's coming up. It's you see, when you zoom out, you can notice all the moving parts. You can see what's going to come next. Faizan says, Mars, I think people that love her and will love her more, but people who hate her will hate her more now. Definitely her employment might be a bit harder in mainstream media because of certain powers. Which powers could be funding her next move? Which? I believe that when you enter into these, let's say, collaborations, which are strategic, to say the least, when you're that type of a person who has that kind of a family and a team, and then she's got her husband, you are calculating about where you go, and then you know about your exit strategy and what is going to impact that exit strategy, what's going to actually affect things. So you're going to mitigate risk. And in so doing, you're going to plan. What's my plan B? What's my plan C? She started doubling down on her Christian morality. And now we see constant tweets about Christ being king. Now we're seeing more and more Christian morality enter the zeitgeist. So what's next? I think she's prepared. We cannot imagine, we cannot deny that there's going to be more powerful puppet string pulling entities who are all about pushing Christian morality, because there's always some powerful entity wanting to push something that may be innocent and is innocent, or is absolutely pure and spiritual and all those wonderful things, but use it for their own purposes, use it for their own agenda, their own objectives. And so I think that she's going to be pretty well. I think she's going to be set for the next move, because the next move is going to be a pretty big one. I can. It's going to be big in the sense it's going to be quite a strategic one, and I think it's going to be one that's going to start to punctuate where commentary goes next. And again, I keep seeing this whole thing like Christian morality entering the space, and it's coming up in questions a lot. Faizan says the only person who openly has offered her a job is Patrick. I don't know if you guys know him in UK as much. No, please tell us more. Patrick David? I don't know whether that was a typo. Let me just quickly do a Google. And if you haven't already and you're watching this far, I'm a new channel. I've been in media, comms, communications, PR for 20 plus years, content creation as well. And I'm a new channel. I appreciate your sub, your like, thumbs up, follow, all the rest of it.